Hello, Mr. O'Brien. This is Pat Kinevane here, just down the road from you in Santry. Are you in Ballymun at the moment?
Yeah, I am.
I'm looking at the beautiful posters behind you.
Yes.
Is that Noah and the Tower Flower?
No, it's not. That's the Derek Bulger. That one there or that one there? No, that's
That one there.
That's the Good Father, Christian O'Reilly. That's Emma Kerwin and Nairi there. I directed that about 5, 6 years ago now. Yeah.
Looks like a great poster. Reminds me of Noah and the Tower Flower in some way, shape, of what that I saw up in the Axis years ago.
That's right.
With amazing Mary Murray and Darren Healy. Stunning performances, weren't they?
Yeah, amazing. Well,
Pat, anyway, it's great to see you.
Great to see you, and thanks a million for taking part. And it's great. I think what's great about connecting online is you could be, just say you're just up the road, but you could be anywhere in the whole wide world.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure because it's a Friday, and I have my bits and pieces done for the week, and I'm just going to sit on my arse now for the weekend. So this is a nice way to start the weekend, buddy.
Good. Well, I hope I won't. I won't stretch you out before the weekend. Come here to me, Pat. Tell us, when you were a Gosling, was this always something that you were destined to do? Do you think, was a life in the theatre always for you?
I really don't know. Like, first of all, you know me a long time now. And I'm very, very grateful, Mark, for everything that's happening in my life, especially when it comes to, creatively. I never really believed that I would get this much, I suppose, peace and satisfaction and calm from it. So that really brings me around to gratitude. How grateful I am for every single chance I've ever got, and for anyone who's ever trusted me to play a part on the stage or on TV or on film or whatever, or radio, which I love. So I suppose I never really had huge expectations, because I grew up in the middle. Even though I'm from the town of Cove, I grew up away outside of the town, in a rural part of it. So it would have been the equivalent of years ago, maybe out in Santry, being outside the city, outside the bona fide. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I grew up, as a country boy, really, on farms and working on farms in the summer times. So I suppose it was always my escape, you know what I mean? Yeah. Putting on old plays in the back garden and scribbling things down and doing sketches, and I think it was always an outlet for me. I never really saw it as anything that I would possibly ever make a living out of, but I suppose as I went on through my teens and then when I started working in the civil service and things like that, and other jobs, when I realized that I had to make myself very happy, Does that make sense?
It'll make great sense, yeah. And Pat, can you tell me about that, sort of when you're young and in kind of rural Cork or Cove, and you're in school and you're having these kind of spaces in your imagination that you can kind of play in and whatever. But in relation to your work prospects, what was it kind of, where was your nose heading in relation to jobs? Like, what was the options for you back then?
In school, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like anybody else in the early 80s, there was very little going on, but that's okay. That's all we were used to. So I was lucky. I was probably bright, but I never really put the work in at school. Yeah. I should have worked harder, But that said, sure, I was always way up in the clouds. I'd be in English class. I'd be thinking about, I'd be visualizing the play by the Western world, how to do the production, rather than, you know, thinking about the questions for the leaving cert. You know what I mean? Or if we were doing Hamlet, I was visualizing, you know what I mean, where it was, and clouds and soldiers, and do you know what I mean? So I was somewhere else, like. But I got chances when I left school, so I got a chance to be a student nurse, which I took, but I left it very, very shortly afterwards. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't for me. Not so much it wasn't for me, but I hated the environment in which I was put as a student. So I left that, and then I went into the An Post, and I was working in An Post for a few years as behind the counter selling stamps, and sorting letters, and with the postman, and I was all over the country with that. So like I had chances, but all right, I suppose. Am I rambling?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Just say, Pat, stop rambling.
No.
Because I have no idea.
No, go on.
Because it's the weekend. I goes for a ramble at the weekend.
Oh, ramble away, I'll follow you.
But I tell you, it was my father, my beautiful father. He passed away when I was 21. And he was a beautiful man in every way. And instead, I suppose, of letting myself go into a kind of a rabbit hole of grief, I said, fuck this, life is for living. I changed my life completely, and I left my job, and I was lucky enough to have gone on a summer course, and the amazing Patrick Sutton was given the course, and he said to me, I am running a company called Team Theatre Company in Dublin, theatre and education. Would you be interested in auditioning for them? And I thought, well, that's mad. So he obviously saw something in me, thank God. Yeah. I went thinking I wouldn't get it, and I got the audition for Team, and I said, that's it. So I gave everything up and just jumped into the whole world of theatre in Dublin and moved to Dublin, and that was it.
Wow. And again, so, you know, again, there was at the very formative time in Dublin when Team was kind of starting to go, and, you know, all the energy around that amazing company. And I suppose that they must have been very exciting times to be around, Pat.
It was really exciting, Mark, because it was all about creativity, and it was all about bringing creativity to very, very open-minded secondary school kids and very imaginative primary school kids. So like, it was such a pleasure to go around to all of the schools, but they were an amazing company to work for. They looked after us actors, and we always had an amazing stage manager on tour with us. And I firmly believe that it was a really great way of understanding the functioning of theatre, how it slots together. Like, I had done a lot of amateur drama, which I was really proud to be a part of and very humbled to be a part of, because I think it taught me growing up, you know, how, number one, be quiet when you're backstage. Number two, you know, look at other actors when you're on the stage at them. Number three, be respectful. You know, all those things that, you know, sometimes people let slip. And it was a good training, but I think the best thing I could have done was go into Team, because it was almost like a continuation of that, but in a professional form. You know.
What show did you do, Pat, for first off with the Team? What was?
I did a show by the wonderful Anton O'Flaherty, and it was called Dreamwalker. And then we did a kids one called Ambrose and the Gumblewumps, which was mad. And then the final one I did was it was called Shadow Tackle. But sure, we had a great time. We were able to be ultimately creative, and we saw parts of the country we never saw before. But it was a job, and I was always a worker, you know, still am. Like, you know, I kind of view it as there's a certain amount of kind of magic about working in the theatre, but it also is a very, very, as you know, it's it's not for the faint-hearted, and you have to be prepared, and I still am, to sweat and to get down and dirty with it and to provide the service, which is to entertain,
Yeah.
you know?
I think it's interesting. So, you mentioned the amateur drama space there. Now, what sort of parts and plays were you in the amateur years, Pat? What sort of stuff did you do?
Well, like now, Marky, it's like the lifeblood of theatre, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of the time is in the provinces, and it's down in theatre groups all over the country. They're amazing people, you know, and they give their time and their effort. And when I was growing up, I had somebody like the amazing Claire Cullinan, who was incredible to young people in Kinevane, incredible to me. God rest that beautiful woman. She was amazing. And people like Noreen Brennan, and I then, the biggest kind of venture I had was with the Holbolan Theatre Group down there, which was on the naval base.
Yeah.
But Lieutenant Commander Liam Smith, like he was doing like really, really highly polished amateur theatre, like, you know, All Ireland standard stuff. And
yeah.
we would have done everything from like, we would have done everything. We would have done bits of Shakespeare. We would have done John B. Keane. We would have done Dario Fo. We would have done Georges Feydeau. We would have done, you know, you're talking about like continental European farces, and you're kind of going, this is mad, like, you know, because it wasn't commercial. It was all about the
kind of the exploration of it. I think
the exploration of it, yeah. So we were exposed to scripts that I can't even believe, like the kind of stuff we did. But you were exposed to writing from all over the world, really, and you're doing Tennessee Williams 1 minute, and then you're doing, you know, Arthur Miller, or you're doing Bernard Farrell, or do you know what I mean? It's like
And so, come here, Pat. Back then, you kind of finished that. You know, and one thing about Team as well, I kind of would have had a long affiliation with them myself and a deep love for the company. But they're also long contracts. You know, there was you kind of as an actor, you were kind of, it was great. You kind of got a long contract with them. So after
you said it, Mark. You said it, boy. It was a 6-month contract.
Yeah.
So I did a year and a half with them, 3 contracts, and I was very, very grateful, man. It meant that I could kind of settle into Dublin, and I had work for that year and a half, and I could find my feet, and people came, you know, people came to those shows. If they were casting film, or if they were casting commercials and stuff, they'd come in and they'd see you, and you know, I got chances from those shows, and then, you know, somebody would say, look, would you be interested in auditioning for this or auditioning for that? But they were different times, and I know that I was very blessed. Do you know what I mean? I was a country boy coming up to Dublin, and I know that I was kind of looked after in some way. You know, the people that gave me chances, so I was always aware of that.
Well, I think you can be blessed with talent, Pat, as well, which is not the kind of, you know, not to be put down either. That you can you know, there's one thing about being blessed, but there's also having the talent to deliver on it.
Well, the way I look at it is, like, I'm in this business, you know, nearly 32 years now, and I'm still healthy. The overwhelming feeling I have, as I said to you, is gratitude, because once I practice that, everything else just falls into place, you know. But I do think that there's a lot of luck involved, and I think that there's plenty of people that would drown me with their talent. They're amazingly talented people that didn't get the chances, or that don't get the chances. And so I think that it's all relative like that, you know. And I'm also a proud working class boy. So I realize that, okay, if there's a chance there, you have to work hard for it. But there is a certain amount of luck involved in timing and all those things. So if I was a plumber, I'd say I was a good plumber. That's as much as I can say. Do you know what I mean?
When you left Team, then what was kind of like you found your kind of, I suppose for want of a better word, you kind of found your tribe, or you kind of you knew what you wanted to do. But how did that progress for you then? How, like, what was that feeling after coming out of a year and a half? What was next?
Great question. It was kind of course, it was naturally daunting, but I still had a kind of a fierceness about me. I didn't really care about the fear. And at that stage, I had got an agent, and I was going for, I was going for shows, and thank God I got work very early on. And Paul Mercier, amazing Passion Machine. I got work with them, and that was a learning curve in itself, because he's just such a meticulous professional, and his writing is amazing. And so just to be in the rehearsal room with him at the start I was kind of, when I look back, I worked hard, but I had to pinch myself sometimes, because these were people that I had seen their work before, and now I'm working in a rehearsal room with someone like Paul. And then I ended up with, God rest him, the beautiful Pat Laff, and he cast me in Second Age, which were another great company at the time. And I did Philadelphia Here I Come there. And again, I got to know people outside of team, you know what I mean? You slowly start building up your friendships and your working relationships with people. And I remember in that even, and she's still a good friend of mine, amazing friend, Maura Hastings was in that, and we're friends ever since. She's so talented, and I remember watching her and watching Kate Flynn, and I remember watching them and just feeling really, really lucky to be there. Do you know what I mean? In the rehearsal room, and then things started to take off. Things went from one to the other, and I eventually went to Druid, and then I went in very shortly after that into the Abbey, which was very kind of a quick successional thing.
And was there a moment that you kind of felt, oh, okay, this is becoming different now? Was there a moment that you kind of went, oh, okay, now this is kind of starting to be, were you aware of that kind of movement for you?
I think I was, Mark, when I went into the Abbey, because it was always my dream to be in the National Theatre. And even growing up as a young fella, I would have heard on Radio Éireann talk of the Abbey and of the productions. I'd never been really until I was about 20 years of age, 19 or 20, to the Abbey.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing Tom McIntyre's The Great Hunger, and I cried right through it, and I was really excited and saw amazing Tom Hickey, and I remember looking at it going, maybe someday I'll get to be on the Abbey stage, never thinking it would happen, of course, but I think it was the Abbey really when I started, and I'm not denigrating the other companies, but it was just, that was the National Theatre.
Yeah.
And I felt even if it never happened again, just to get on the Peacock stage or the Abbey stage once would have been enough for me,
And what was your first show in there, Pat?
The first show I did was in the Peacock, and it was Tom Murphy's The Patriot Game. Sorry, there's a breeze blowing outside.
Yeah.
And there was a gang of us in it, and we had a great time. And that was my first time. And I was like overawed by the place, really. And then I think the next show I did there was Drama at Inish, actually, with the Niall Buggy was in that. You see, I'm a super fan of Niall Buggy, because I think he's just the best actor that ever lived, and the best Irish actor that ever lived. He's just amazing. So
you're kind of talking there about, as well, that when things kind of happen fast, when things kind of relatively start happening fast, when you kind of, as you say, you start working with the likes of Druid, and coming from Team, and then Passion Machine, and then you land in the Abbey and things. And a lot of it is broadening your networks, and broadening kind of who you know and who you 'Cause I always feel that you kind of, you kind of find yourselves, no matter what stage of your career you're at, you kind of find yourself in rooms that you never thought you'd be in with people that you never thought, and it's kind of, then it becomes normal, or it becomes something that, and it's that fascination of how you keep that, not how you keep the magic, but like that sense of, yeah, it's new the whole time. And I think you particularly, like those early years, you did some incredible, like you were in some incredible productions and with some incredible people very, very early.
Yeah, I was only talking about that recently, actually, Mark, and it is like I never ever forget the privilege of that. Like I always counted it as a huge privilege to be in big ensemble cast productions with big production values in the Abbey and in the Gate, we'll say,
Yeah,
during the 90s particularly. And that was kind of, when I think now about a lot of young actors starting off, my heart breaks for them because there isn't that opportunity to cut your teeth, and to watch. Like I was always watching, just in amazement, of course, from the wings. But like I would spend more time in the wings watching the likes of Niall Buggy and the likes of Des Cave and Joan O'Hara. Do you know what I mean? Just watching them, just seeing their craft, seeing the way they use the stage. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Deirdre Donnelly, seeing the way she commands the stage. There's just so many like heroes to me.
Yeah.
That was a great way of doing it, but at the same time, you were evolving all the time as a performer by the sheer fact that you were sharing the stage with these people, even for a moment.
Yeah.
And also practically you were getting more confidence because you were in a production and you were getting paid and you were able to pay your rent and it was sustainable,
Yeah.
I don't really know how people do it now. I really don't know how they actually support themselves and keep their spirits up.
No, I think it's a major problem because I think, having been kind of come up through the same era as yourself, also the society was different. It was kind of cheaper to live too. You know what I mean? It was kind of, rents were cheaper. It wasn't the pressure that there is now. But Pat, you also, I mean, like if you look at it, it's kind of looking, even though I've known you for years, it was like looking through your, CV or yesterday when I was kind of thinking about talking to you. But like, I mean, obviously I briefly, very briefly was on the same stage as you in the late 90s in the Colleen Bond, which was me looking at the from the wings that you kind of did doing your business. But before that, like, Lunasa, translations, by the bottle of cats, the rivals, like they're seminal kind of productions. And did you get, like, I'm just wondering about your process as an actor, and we'll come on to the kind of writing bit later on, but your process as an actor, does it kind of change radically from show to show, or do you have a way of kind of getting yourself there?
Well, look, first of all, thank you for mentioning those productions because they meant an awful lot to me to be in them, and to be chosen to be in them. And they were kind of career altering ones to do as well, because you were watching people and they set a very high bar, the directors set a very high bar and the other actors set an even higher bar. So there was a challenge there. And I think that sort of challenge, looking back now, purely because you asked me there, actually, I think it kind of builds up your resilience and your sense of confidence, I suppose, a quiet confidence that, okay, I'll deal with this show and then I'll move on to the next. I never really was someone to think too far ahead. I still don't. But yeah, in a round way to answer it, I think that I definitely would have just had a very, very different sort of a working process with each show. I would have come with a very different sort of an energy and attitude. I suppose part of modus operandi always was to change, was to have a versatility.
Yeah.
And not be the same in every show, you know. I notice it would be like yourself, it's like the person is embodied,
Yeah.
but to try and vary it and to try and mix it up so that I was challenging myself all the time. Still am, really, you know.
But to work with the likes, I mean, you work with Jonathan Miller twice.
Yeah.
I mean, that, like, again, I never met the man. I've only watched it. One of the kind of seminal things for me was kind of watching masterclasses of his on BBC Two years ago, and just Jesus Christ, I'd say the intellect, but also the not just the intellect, the kind of, fun side of it, or the kind of play side of it, kind of seemed to come across. Was he amazing to work with?
He was like that. There's somebody that I never thought I'd work with, because like I remember going in to audition for She Stoops to Conquer. Was She Stoops to Conquer? It was. Yeah. And I went in to meet him, and I was the country bumpkin. Do you know what I mean? And he was sitting there, and he's such a lovely, lovely man, and he was terribly, and very, very funny. And immediately, I just trusted him, and he gave me a chance. You know what I mean? And he celebrated, I suppose, a sense of fun as well. I never really had to try to. I never felt I had to impress him or anything like that. He was just very, very kind to me, but hilariously funny. I remember there was somebody came in one day to the rehearsal room, and they snuck in like that, right? And he just said, he said, "Darling, would you just walk properly and come into the chair?" He said, "You're drawing attention to yourself." And I thought, he said, "I hate that. I hate when people come in and they do this and they sneak over to the chair." He said, "You're actually, if you just walked in and you sat in the chair, it would be over quicker, but you're actually slowing it down and you're really, really drawing attention to yourself." And I thought, as a piece of psychology, that's amazing.
That reminds me of the behavior in a theater or in a cinema of the people trying to open the sweet wrapper slowly. You kind of go, just pull it off quickly. It's kind of...
Do it. But he was like that. He had a massive intellect, and then I worked with him again on As You Like It, and again I just had a wonderful time. I think as well, I trusted him, and it's like any job. I think when you go into a rehearsal room and you know that you're valued, and you know that you are wanted in it, and that your contribution is it's very much welcomed. It mightn't always be in the final production, but that sense of sharing really was always my favorite place to be. So he was one of those highlights, and thank you for mentioning him.
Yeah, and
as opposed, and I can say it now because I'm in my 50s, but like, as opposed to going into a rehearsal room where you're hoodwinked and you think, oh, they picked me because they like me, and then they just bully the shit out of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That went on too in places, and I saw other people being bullied, and I remember kind of thinking, well, if you're going to cast somebody, let them do their work. Don't rip the rug out from under them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
And thank God that only happened to me a few times, and I moved on from it. But I always would value the antithesis of that, which is the Jonathan Miller thing, where you're as a person and as a worker that you're valued, and they care for you.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing, across all our sector, is that you mentioned about feeling safe, because you can only really kind of, do your best when you do feel that you're safe and supported. It goes without saying, but as you say, it doesn't always happen. But Pat, you kind of, like, again, looking at kind of the work you've done, they're gas in a way, as in recent years when you started to develop, your own journey with writing and with Jim and Fishamble and that. But like, most of the stuff you did back in the day was huge cast. Like, there were big casts. Like there
Big
was,
cast.
you know, I mean, probably one of the smallest casts you probably did was Lunacy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the scale of kind of stuff that and obviously that must be great to be. Did you go over to Australia with
We went to Australia there was one cast of Lunacy in the West End in London, and the other cast were in Broadway. Hear me, the Broadway, and then we were picked as the third cast to go to Australia for 6 months. Wow. Oh, merciful Jesus Christ! That's all I say.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah,
we had a ball.
Yeah.
And still friends for life. Like still friends for life. Marion O'Dwyer, amazing. Noel Brown, amazing. Michelle Forbes, do you know what I mean? Maria McDermott Rowe,
yeah.
Cave, Johnny Oldhead, amazing people.
But it's gas. I mean, like you look back then, it's like that's quasi Riverdance. You know, like having 3 productions, and that's such a huge hit. I think we kind of our memory kind of goes, oh yeah, Dancing Lunas was a big hit, but actually it was massive. I mean, that was kind of a huge thing, a great thing to be involved in, and then flip there as well to you've been to the National in London with the Colin Bawn, as I said, and kind of you've done. You've even played the Cork legend of Roy Keane, Pat.
I did play Roy Keane in Aikino, and it's one of the nicest moments of my life. I had a great time. Now, there's no way I was as good as Mario Rosenstock because he is amazing. But he did it first, fair dues to him, he was amazing. And then I took over in the first year of it, and I just had to really throw myself in my own way into it, and I had an absolute ball, and I had the pleasure of meeting Roy Keane. He came backstage, to see us in the Olympia, and I was fascinated by him because I'd never seen anybody so charismatic in my life. He just amazing, and such a gentleman.
Yeah, and did he approve of your portrayal?
He did. He was very, very kind, and he was very generous to us all. And then we went down to, I remember we went to the INEC in Killarney, and we were playing to like 2,500 people a night, all these crazy Roy Keane fans. It was just like, it was the most bizarre. That was the most bizarre time in my life, those few months, because it was like you said about Lunacy. Like Aikino, there was men that never ever went to the theatre before, but they went to see Aikino.
Yeah, yeah.
There was more men in the theatre than women. Like, I mean, it was just like bonkers.
But I think that's, I mean, we'll get to it in a few minutes, but I think that's what's so amazing about you, Pat, in a lot of ways, that you can, because you've got such an open persona when you act, you can kind of occupy the very high intellect space, around Godot and whatever, Jonathan Miller and so on. But you can play it's all the same. Sorry, I don't mean the output's all the same, but the process seems to be all the same. I've had I think, but that's not an easy thing to do. That's an attitude rather than that's an attitude to your work.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. But what it is really is, and thanks for acknowledging that. But what it is really for me is you're given an opportunity. You've been paid a wage. You've been paid to occupy the character. I don't take myself too seriously at all. I take myself seriously when I start work at 8 o'clock in the evening when I'm doing the show, and when it's finished at 10 o'clock. I take myself seriously because there's a responsibility on me to deliver, as I said, and to, especially in ensemble, to be part of it and to make the show suspend disbelief, but that's when I take myself seriously. Outside of that, I love a good fucking laugh. I love having a laugh in rehearsal rooms. I love having a laugh with directors and that. So I think that part of it will always be my favorite part of working in the theatre, is that sense of fun and not taking yourself too seriously, because that's the end, really. And
on that, obviously, you've done some very serious work, is the wrong word, but I mean, you've been in Marina Card, Bog of Cats, and that must have been like that work. I mean, that's been an amazing play, but I think as well there was a period there in the 90s and early 2000s when there was a lot of new work coming through in Irish theatre and a lot of new directors coming through, and they were hitting the main stages. So it must have been great to be part of all that.
Yeah, it was. I kind of left it for a little bit in like 2000, 2001, 2000. Around then, I bowed out for a while, and because my beautiful son was born, so I wanted to spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I knew, especially working with, we say with someone like the genius of Marina Carr, you just know that you're in for a treat. You know that you're dealing with visceral theatre, but also visceral sense of humour as well. And I'm just using that as an example of like that true sort of high theatrical experience, you know what I mean? Which is my favorite, because I used to hear, I love peasant quality, you see, when it comes to playing country people. I remember someone said, a director said, it got back to me, you know, because I do hear things back, Bert, like people do talking. Oh yeah, it's amazing. Like, and I always know if somebody knows that I've heard it back because they blush in front of me when they meet me. And I remember this director said to me, oh, that Kinevane fella, he's very, I wouldn't cast him in that, he's very PQ. And I went and asked an older actor what PQ was, and it was peasant quality, right?
Sorry,
so I don't know if actor or directors use it anymore, but so then I remember going, I'm peasant quality. I'm like, that's great. It's nice to be put in a pigeonhole, but I was always very proud of the peasant quality, and that's why I love Marina's plays, because she makes kings out of people and she makes queens out of people, and she celebrates rural settings, and so I knew I was in my perfect genre when I was working with Marina.
Well, it's funny actually. It's a thread through your work. It's that kind of sense of of that vindication, or honesty of that rural. I'm not all the time, but that kind of rural man or person or ghost or whatever, but that sense of, and I think that's because too often it's, the more than say working class theatre has been in the past, the more it's been othered, it's been the butt of a joke, or it's been the criminal, whatever it is. But I think, that you've brought to characters, even characters that we laugh at, but have made them human in that, across a range of work. And I remember I like working with you in the Colin Vaughan, with my one line, having loads of time to look at what you were doing. But there was a sense of that was a very heightened piece. But again, the honesty of that character and the tragedy of that character was very much apparent.
Yeah, it's I believe it now even more, Mark. Especially coming out of this pandemic, please God, we'll all be okay. And I've always believed it, but I believe it even more now that it always was time in my little mind to banish elitism from theatre. Do you know what I mean? And there's a certain amount of Dublin 4 that has to be kicked out of theatre. Do you know what I mean? Like that, it kind of, for years, there was a huge influence of privilege, really, about the theatre, or you were no one unless you went to see a show in the Abbey or a show in the Gate. And sure, I remember working in the Gate years and years ago, and I was very thankful to be there. But you'd be looking into the audience, and there was like fur coats, say no more, and they'd fallen asleep. And they were there, a lot of them, because they just wanted to say that they were at the Gate last night. Did you see Mark O'Brien in the Gate last night? He was wonderful. So that kind of shit needs to go from theatre, because it belongs to rural people as much as it belongs to upper middle class people.
Yeah.
But there can never be that imbalance ever again. We need to get down and dirty with this and just make it accessible even more to everybody.
Yeah.
And on that, I'm segueing into you, like in the access. That you're my local art centre. You know how much I love you all up there, right? Yeah. And I love you because you make theatre and you make the arts accessible for everybody. People travel from all over Dublin to go to the access, but they also come from Ballymun itself to go to the Axis, and they travel from all around Dublin. And I think that is the ultimate compliment I can pay to you and everyone there, is that you have blasted the arts wide open. And so it doesn't matter where you come from, what background you come from, whether it's underprivileged or whether it's very wealthy, it doesn't matter. Arts is arts, and it's for everybody, you know.
Pat, on that, now I'm blushing. But on that, you have given. I remember one night. It's been many great nights that I've experienced in the theatre here that I'm kind of blessed to kind of be in charge of. You did a benefit night of Silent, and holy Jesus Christ, the atmosphere. Like I think the fourth wall was somewhere out on the plaza that night. I don't think there was any sense of, but I mean, we'll talk about those plays in a minute. But the magic of you within that genre of work was being able to keep a narrative path with the audience thinking that you'd gone completely down, you know, and that was amazing night. I'll never forget that night and that energy. And I think it kind of epitomized what we're trying to do here, but also, you know, those glorious pieces of work. And maybe we'll talk about that. And I don't want to kind of skip forward too much, but, you know, because a lot of TV and kind of film work that you've kind of were involved in that time as well. But
before you go on though, Marky, and I mean this with love, it's like, what you've got going on there, and all the brilliant colleagues you have working up there, right? You've got Niamh, and who's amazing, and then you've got Alan and Dave and Anna and Marcella and Linda and Nicola, you know, and Ellie. It's Ellie, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And you have an amazing team there. Again, going back to what I was talking about, everyone is so important and equally important and valued. And sure, my own son, Kes, he went up there and did his transition work experience under Joe, and Sean Ian is up there as well. I mean, you've got a brilliant thing going because you've taken away all of that. You've taken away, do you know what you've taken away from it actually? And I suppose this is the main point I'm trying to make, and I'll shut up then, is there isn't a sense of entitlement about the arts. There should never be a sense of entitlement about the arts. And for years, it was a very entitled stadium.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I think it's...
And, you know, my son has, like, what he did for him up in the Access is amazing. He was in there with school concerts since he was a kid, but he was also rapping, and he was with the Innocents up there and playing. And you gave him space and time to develop and to do all those things. Jesus, man, I mean, that's an ideal kind of growing up creative time, you know, for anyone in the community. So I'm not letting you away without complimenting you. That's how you can
go on now. I cut this bit out.
You will not.
Come here to me. Sorry, just in relation to all of that, because I kind of share completely what you're saying, and I think it's a value system rather than, you know, because I always say, people say to me, Jesus, how is Access so embedded in the community? How do you do? It's great what you do. And I went, it's kind of a natural thing to do. I mean, it's not like, you know, it's kind of, yeah, it's about being open. But come here, talk to me then about the young lad who was scribbling and who was, you know, making up things in his head when he was younger. And when did that start to kind of clip back in on you, Pat? That kind of, you know, when did those voices start to emerge, or when did that kind of drive for you to start making work yourself?
I was always scribbling as a young fella, and particularly I still get that feeling at Christmas, because, you know, when you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere at Christmas, and I had a beautiful growing up in Cove, but, you know, when you're kind of stuck the days between Christmas Day and going back to school, and you're so bored, and that was always a time where, in order to keep my mind going, I would always write. I'd be writing short plays or poetry or something, you know, shite, anything just to keep me going. But I remember having a kind of a revisitation of that when I was working in the post office. I would have been kind of stationed in different towns around Ireland, you know what I mean, Portlaoise. and you're stuck in at the time you're stuck in lodgings, as they called it, and you'd be stuck in an OB&B for weeks, and that was my kind of sanity, was to write things down. Okay. So then I kind of revisited that period in Dublin. I was working away as an actor, but I started to scribble stuff down, and then it was Jim Cullerton. He's an amazing man. He's just an amazing man, and he's changed my life like completely by taking on my work and by trusting me, and he's just an amazing guy and an amazing director, and runs an amazing company. And I don't know how it happened. We were chatting about it. He said, "Are you writing anything?" Or you mentioned something about writing. I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Could I have a look at it?" And it was a treatment of my first full length play, which was The Nun's Wood. So I gave him that, and again, true to form, Jim, like attention to detail, amazing, but ultimately nurtured it, and really, really kind of got behind it, and was really gentle, but very, very accurate about what he was talking about, and eventually got me to develop it, and they took that show, and it was the first time that I had ever had a kind of a professional production of anything, and they did The Nun's Wood, and it was a great success, and I was blown away by that. And then I wrote another full-length play for them in 1999 for the theatre festival. That was The Plains of Enna, and they did a beautiful job on that. And then I kind of stepped back for a while, because I wanted to spend time with my boy. So I had a great time with my little infant, and he's nearly 20 now. It's mad. And I had the best time for the first 4 years with him, and then I started to kind of come out of that, and I went back into theatre, and I was delighted to do so. But then I got a kind of something happened. I just went, not that there's anything wrong with them, but I thought, I'm really not into doing Victorian house dramas anymore. I'm really not into doing kind of dated 19th century theatre anymore. Nothing wrong with it. But it's just me. Something changed, and I said, look, if you're going to do something, Pat, if you're going to do something, you do it with all of the passion you did it with before, but don't half do it. So it has to be something, I suppose. I suppose it has to be something that means something to me, and that will challenge me, but change or question things societally and politically. Do you know what I mean? I hate using the word artist. It kind of freaks me out. But as, I suppose, someone who works in the arts, I had to ask myself the question, are you going to ask questions? Are you going to take an issue and highlight it if something means something to you, when you want to comment on it, and then maybe ask questions, but offer some answers as well. And so that, I think, I felt a sense of duty that I wasn't fulfilling. So I thought, well, if you're going to go forward. So anyway, I approached Jim, and Forgotten was the first solo piece I did with Fishamble, and since then we've been working together for 14 years.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think,
and they're so good to me, and they're an amazing company. They work so hard. We all do, but people say to me, "Oh, you're working solo." I'd never work solo. I'm performing physically by myself, but we're working together. It's a huge effort to get those pieces up off the ground, and to travel. Like, we've traveled so much.
Yeah, you have. I mean, it's gas. But the solo bit, it was brilliant when I saw the in progress work of Before a couple of years ago in the theatre festival. I just thought yourself and Jim were magic. The sense of you at the beginning going, look, I might, forget some stuff here, and I'm going to talk. But it was like Jim was in the play with you. It was brilliant to watch. that sense of where am I now? What are we doing? Where are we going? But that there must be some at this stage, some amazing shorthand between the areas.
There would be. I never take anything for granted, and I love when Jim comes down the country, we'll say, to see the show after months. He always keeps his eye on the productions, and I always look forward to getting notes from him because he's got such an incredible director's eye and a visual panache, right? That sometimes I say and do things, and you get into bad habits as well. We all get into bad habits. So I know I am like a big mad country racehorse on the beach. Like I need someone to put a bridle in my teeth, right? Because otherwise I will run and in the wrong direction. Do you know what I mean? Like we need to be controlled, you know. But he is, even still after 14 years with the 4 pieces, Mark, he still gives me the most amazing notes, and it develops the pieces even further, and it evolves the pieces, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It keeps him relevant, and he's on top of everything else, and on top of his brilliant talent, he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. He's a gentleman, and the reason I can open up and do my work freely and with all of my heart is because I feel totally safe in a rehearsal room. Nothing phases me in a rehearsal room with Jim and Vishamble, because I know that I'm trusted, but I trust them completely, and I can make an utter fool of myself. And I do. And we laugh at it, and we laugh again. And it's just one of those, it's just an amazing working relationship that I have with him. And he's just an amazing man. Like, that company are going like 32 years now, 33 years. That's an incredible achievement, you know.
And still so fresh. Do you know what I mean? And still with the people they work with. But Pat, that, like within all that, I mean, how is, particularly when you're in them yourself, like when does the writer stop and the actor start? Is that a hard thing for you? Is that a kind of a difficult process for you, or is that okay?
That's a really good question, Kate, because it's very easy for me. And this is not false modesty at all. This is the truth, because Jim knows this. I've often said it. To use the word writer, or to, you know, I still find awkward. It's like, I kind of look at it as, all right, I'll be honest, because Jim will always say to me, Pat, you don't need to, but I never went to 3rd level. And some part of me thinks that, or always thought that you had to have gone to university to qualify to be a writer. Yeah. So I probably still have that kind of hang up, and it's the truth. And that I am very, very humble about the fact that I drag my feet down to the ground every day. I drag them onto the ground, and I say, look, you're lucky to be working, and you're lucky to be allowed to write and to be encouraged to write, and you're lucky to be given the chance to perform these pieces. So yeah, it's easy for me because I don't really concentrate on my writing as a kind of a title.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Andrew, yeah. And
we all have our bits that are fucked up in our heads. That's mine. Right?
Well, I mean, they brought you around the world, those shows, and picking up some serious awards on the way, like Mr. Olivier and so on. I mean, that, you know, I mean, obviously huge awards at the Edinburgh Fringe as well, but to kind of, you know, we all work in the theatre, and we all, you know the heritage of the theatre, and to have that little bust, you know, must be an incredible thing.
It is an incredible thing. I never expected it at all. We never really did the work, as you know, for those reasons.
Yeah.
My reward and my award always is being able to go to work, and I love it, and I love packing my cases and going out And in that sense, and Jim knows it as well, like Forgotten was the original show in the bag, really. That was the first time that we, myself and Jim kind of said, right, he was kind of going, what do you mean? I said, I can get all this stuff into a suitcase, you know, I can do this, you know, and he trusted me, like he's amazing. And they went with it. But that's my award. Like, I'm very excited every time I have to do one of the shows, because I kind of go, I have to pinch myself and go, you're actually packing a suitcase and you're bringing it to a theatre and you're doing a show. So, and I'm not really, I was never an awardee person like that, but I was very, very, I was very humbled by it, and particularly in 2016, because it happened around Easter, and for me personally, there's a character in Silent called Pierce, and it was my way of thanking our wonderful fighters in 1916, and I wore my Easter lily in my lapel to the Royal Theatre, Royal Ballet Theatre, and I went over with Jim thinking that we were so lucky to be there, never realising that we'd even been considered for an Olympic award. No, we had no idea. Sure, he rang me in Australia before that a few months, and he said, Lada, he taught me, and I said, fuck off. I said, you know, he said, I'm serious. And I said, would you stop? That's a terrible thing to say. You know what I mean? Like, so I said, don't wind me up like that. That's an awful thing to say, Jim. And he said, I'm not, I'm telling you. So anyway, look, it was completely unexpected to be nominated, and then it was completely unexpected to win it. But I had a private sense of really, really being blown away by the fact that two Irish boys, that's all we were, we still are, two Irish boys were there, and all of a sudden we're standing there going, I can't believe, because when we were walking in, nobody knew who we were. They still don't, but everyone was taking pictures of of celebrities. We were taking pictures of each other. Like, that's because nobody knew who we were, and they still don't know who we were. But like afterwards, they were all coming over to us and shaking our hands, and we were going. It felt so good to be Irish, Mark, to be honest with you.
I think that's a brilliant. I hadn't put those two together. That's a brilliant story of, the 100 years commemoration of the Rising and the Irish infiltration, the kind of the British mainstream culture. And take one of their awards back home from them.
Take one of the awards, but we were really blown away. But my final thing on that really is that, and I always am even more, I was so delighted for Fishamble and for Jim, because that's a huge thing for a company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for the sustenance of a company and for the reputation abroad.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be working. I have enough. Do you know what I mean? I don't need much to make me happy. You know, working for a company, it's huge.
Yeah. Sorry. And I won't keep it much longer, but there's a couple of things I want to ask you. Like you mentioned, we talked about it earlier on, but the ordinary man or the ordinary woman, in your work, and certainly in those 4 plays, that sense of, kind of maybe drawing the audience onto the stage and drawing their lives onto a stage and embodying so much from a social justice point of view and from a lots of different points of view. That seems to have grown more and more. I mean, I think it was obviously always important to you as a man and as an actor, but in your own work, that seems becoming more and more important to you. I don't mean politics with a big P, but actually the more important politics of bringing the normal person onto the stage.
Yeah. I feel very, even after a few years working in the industry, Mark, I felt very fulfilled. So I really wasn't, I was never a person that was really driven by the success of it all.
Yeah.
I was driven by, I suppose, an insatiable appetite to create.
Yeah.
And to be in a creative ensemble, looking in, going, "Oh my God, this is mad! Like this is that kind of feeling of elevation where you're actually outside of yourself. You're escaping, I suppose, the banality sometimes of life, you know.
Yeah.
And you remember nights in the Colleen Baum when we were doing that, and it was like you were lifted off the stage by the audience. Do you know what I mean? And so my drive always was creativity. It was never for profit or for you know, success, or you know, and I still am like that. People might see me being visceral on stage at times or whatever, and they might think that I am the kind of person that is driven and I would walk over bones to get. No, I'm the opposite of that. I'm very fulfilled. So anything I've had really, particularly since my son was born, like that was the icing on the cake in my life and always will be. Anything else is a bonus, really. Any production or any tour or any, you know, any creative process after that is a big bonus. I have so much to be thankful for, and I will not allow myself get greedy. Ever.
Come here. Before I let you go, I was talking to Dennis Clossie the other day, and I was kind of saying, you know, he remarked on the moment as well, but it must have been something extraordinary, Pat, with Before and the orchestra, and you know, because he was saying about, like, you know, that the Perrys be in his home studio and you'd be humming tunes and he'd be kind of, you know, extrapolate. But then to have the RT Concert Orchestra play that, but that must have been just an unbelievable experience to do that.
Well, when we were Jim again was amazing because he allowed Dennis Clossie, amazing talent, that man, he's just monster talent, and he allowed us work together. We composed together note by note the melodies. He then took the melodies and did the arrangements for a potential orchestra. We had no idea we were going to get the orchestra to do it, but he was going to arrange it synthetically anyway. He had to, if he was going to create the score for the show. And then all of a sudden, through Fishambles' brilliance and the RT Concert Orchestra, they came to an agreement, and it was the 5th of September 2018. I'll never forget it. And they had to record it for the whole day in Studio One in RT. And we went out and sat there and we cried for the whole day watching that orchestra, those masters of their craft. Like I couldn't keep my eyes off them. And Cathal Sinnott, he's such a beautiful man and an amazing, amazing conductor. And he conducted the score that the melodies, more so the score that Dennis had put together. And I remember talking to Dennis, he'd kill me for saying this, right? But when he was doing the score, he said, Kinevane, I rang him one day, he said, Kinevane, he said, I just see black dots everywhere. I see black dots everywhere. I can't stop seeing black dots, because he was working so hard on it. But the final result was way beyond our dreams of a soundtrack. And when we go around with Before, it is such an honour in every theatre or small hall, particularly in Ireland, that the concert orchestra you can hear, it's like as if they're in the hall. Do you know what I mean? And they're with us, and it's a lovely combination, I think, of theatre and orchestra together like that. But it was a dream come true, and I'll never forget it. And I know Jim will never forget it either, you know?
Come here to me, and before I let you go, we haven't mentioned at all about your kind of film and TV, and I'm going to mention just a couple of things. The Beckett work, you know, the Beckett on film, the Acted Out Words, and I'm kind of referring that back to, you know, working on Godot with Walter Asmus and that kind of playing Lucky, and that phenomenal, I suppose, speech. You know, the majority of, I mean, you're such a visceral actor as well, from top of your head to the bottom of your toes. But that sense of, you know, the two ends of kind of Beckett, you know, Act Without Words, and then the spiel of kind of Lucky. Yeah, I mean that's such an incredible kind of speech.
Well, the Gate were always very, very good to me, and they gave me great chances, especially for a peasant quality actor to be in, you know, be in any sort of Oscar Wilde or or Beckett or anything. You know, I couldn't believe sometimes I was in those. So they were amazing to me. The chances I got were amazing. But Beckett, Act Without Words, I absolutely adore doing Act Without Words too. It was an absolute pleasure. I always in it for a very short time. We went to Australia with that beautiful production of Waiting for Godot.
Yeah.
With the magnificent Johnny Murphy in it. Yeah. Oh my God, he was so amazing in it. And the other lads are amazing too.
Yeah.
But can I be honest with you?
Of course you
I hated playing Lucky.
Really?
I absolutely hated it. I thought, what am I doing? I want to go home. This is too painful. Let somebody else who is into bondage do this, please, and let them suffer and get their kicks from it, because this is too fucking sore.
Right.
I did 6 performances of it. I was delighted to come home, but that's only me. You know, it was just, it wasn't my thing. I will never play Lucky ever.
I could Pat then, like, you know, in film, you kind of been on set with, like, you know, the monster of a Jerry Bruckheimer film. You know, I mean, geez, like, I'd imagine the scale of that must have been something else.
It was great. And I mean, like, the best part of that really was just, I suppose, watching things. You know, you know, just watching how the whole thing was put together, and I was on horseback for 5 months. Like 5 months.
Would you actually ride horses before that?
No, and I lied.
Well, wasn't that one of those things on the CV you kind of go, oh yeah.
And I got an awful fright actually, because on the first day we got on the horses, all the lads, they were mostly English actors, and they just went, boom, they were gone, like just galloped away, and I was like, you know, old Paddy from the farm, you know, on the fucking old nag, right? And they said, have you rode a horse before? I said, yeah, and just. But by the end of the 5 months, I was good. Like I was able to ride a horse. I would never lie again.
Yeah,
Mark.
well, yes, there is that. And come here, most recently as well in Can't Cope, Won't Cope. It was a beautiful part.
Oh, thanks very much. I played the father in it. I haven't done a lot of TV or film over the last few years. The only one that I did, and I absolutely love him. He's a wonderful writer, and he's a beautiful director, was Nick Kelly, and we did a beautiful short. Peter Coonan was in it with me before he went into Love Hate, that wonderful Peter Coonan. He's such a brilliant actor. And we did a 2-hander called Shoe, and it did really, really well. And I loved it. It was just one of those things that you kind of go, you know what, I'm lucky enough in life to be in nice projects sometimes. And of all the stuff that I did in the past, I just felt really, really lucky to be a part of that, because the intentions in it, Mark, were from everybody was beautiful and good. Okay. You know?
Pat, come here. I'm going to let you go, because for one reason and one reason only. I could talk to you forever, but I'm going to be fair on people watching and kind of say thank you for taking part in this. It's just you must know, but you should know every time someone speaks to you, is you're just the most extraordinary person, and also the most extraordinary actor. It's been, you know, my pleasure of being in theaters watching you, but also been in my great pleasure being in your company many times, and look forward to when we get out of release from this pandemic we're all involved in, to have a cup of tea with you again.
Yeah, you too, boy. And I just, you know, it's a strange experience for everybody. And thank you for the lovely things you said. But we're all in it together, and I you know, I'm a forever optimist, and I believe that we will come out the end of this, and theatre will be even better than it was before.
Yeah. And
we'll feel that sense of gratitude even more for having got through it. But we'll also be stronger, and I think, Mark, for theatre, we'll be braver as well, I think, and we won't settle for humdrum. We will push our limits out more. I truly believe that. We have no other choice but to think positively. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Exactly. Listen,
to me, it's going to be like starting all over again, like a little boy, you know?
But it's funny, I always say since I started here that one of my wishes was that I was in Access when it was opened. And now I'm getting the opportunity to reopen it. Do you know what I mean? So there's kind of,
Yeah, And thank you for everything, boy. And I'm looking forward to being up in the Axis soon and getting up to you. And I'm just putting my head down here, and you stay positive, and I'm going to keep scribbling down stuff. And
enjoy your weekend. That's the main thing.
Oh, listen, I enjoyed it from when we started talking here, boy.
Come on.
Get up the yard, Ray.
See you later.
See you, buddy.